A man named Bud appears at the beginning of the film. He has put on his mask, changed into his new clothes, and picked up his shotgun. He was actually a vampire hunter. He extracts the vampire's fangs once he has killed them. At that time, the fangs of vampires were exceedingly valuable. He plugs in a silver cable when he gets to his house. He grabs his shotgun and goes inside, where he sees an old woman. In the meantime, Bud uses the gun to shoot the elderly woman, who was not your typical woman. She was also a vampire, and she assaults Bud after waking up. She attempted to murder Bud, but he removed her head after considerable effort. She consequently perishes, and their necks had to be severed in order to kill them. Later, a second vampire starts to run at Bud, and the silver wire that Bud had earlier put into the door is used to cut off his neck. The scene shifts, and we encounter a lady named Audrey, who is a vampire. She wants to establish her colony with her Valley project. All vampires might settle there after they get there. She had a partnership with a vampire acquaintance, whom she had killed. Bud goes back to his rental home. To prevent vampires from smelling him, he covers his body with turmeric powder. Bud was doing this to avoid being sniffed by their companions of the vampires that he slain recently. They were unable to detect that he had murdered their friends. Later, Bud picks up his daughter, Paige, from her daughter's school. His daughter becomes quite excited when she sees Bud. Bud has kept his vampire hunting status a secret from his family. "Why do you come late?" questions his ex-wife, Jocelyn. In his own words, "I went to a house to clean the pool." Jocelyn says, "Don't lie, please. I left you because of these lies." They don't have enough money to pay their daughter's charge, so she talks about selling her house later. "I'll arrange money within 7 days, he assures Jocelyn, so she need not be concerned. Bud later goes to a pawn shop to sell vampire fangs. In exchange for male vampire fangs, Troy offers him $800. However, Bud needs more money, so he requests $1,500 for Jordan shoes and his favorite rifle. Later, Audrey, a vampire who was employed on the Valley Project, arrives at the home of the old woman Bud killed. Audrey was a 500-year-old vampire, and that old woman was her daughter. She began to cry, and her eyes began to bleed. She gives her men orders saying, "Bring that person, the killer of my daughter." Bud tells his friend Big John that he wants to return to work at Union the following day. "So help me to rejoin Union?" This union was a covert organization. He asks his employer Ralph to give Bud another chance after Big John brings him inside the union. As a former union hunter, Big John had a strong reputation. Ralph begins to recall Bud's faults. He says, "Do you realize how many rules you violated to kill the vampires? First, you lost your job at this union because of that." He was reappointed to this position as a result of Big John. "If you ever commit the same error again, you will be fired immediately." He is assigned to the day shift by Ralph, where his job is to eliminate vampires throughout the day. Bud proceeds to sell old lady vampire fangs at the counter. Bud first receives money from Seth, the man behind the counter. Bud was also obliged to pay union debt, so he later keeps the money back. Ralph tells Seth that Bud is your new partner, and you must work with him. They later follow a teenage vampire together. "This is a teenage vampire," Bud tells him. "Human blood cannot be digested by them. To stay alive, they consume the blood of rats and cats." Bud tells Seth to wait in the car until I kill the vampire before he enters the building. Bud begins murdering the teenage vampires within the building. Then suddenly Bud was assaulted by a vampire. When Seth gets there in the interim, Bud asks him for the gun. Bud kills that vampire after his partner hands him the revolver. Bud has gathered the fangs of all the vampires in that region and slain them all. But Seth was a little scared. Bud tells him that it happens to everyone at first. "Don't worry." Bud then delivers Seth to his home. Audrey also shows up at the pawn shop where Bud sold the male vampire fangs on the opposite side. "About the man who came to sell those teeth," she asks Troy. He tells her Bud's name. Audrey then murders him. Bud meets a female at his place in the interim. She identifies herself as Bud's new neighbor, Heather. She was a nurse once, and Bud does her washing for her. They have become pals, Bud and her. The following day, Bud takes his buddy to the same pawn store. He came earlier to sell the vampire's fangs. After visiting, he learns that his friend Troy was murdered by vampires. He also finds out that vampires are now familiar with his name. "Should we notify the union about this?" Seth asks him. Bud tells him that if he does this, he will never be able to make money. "How will I cover my daughter's tuition if they terminate me from my job?" "All of this is being done to cover my daughter's tuition?" You may file a complaint against me with the union once I pay my daughter's tuition. Hearing this makes his partner's heart melt. In his words, I won't notify Ralph or the union about this. Bud learns that the valley is home to a large number of vampires. Bud departs for the valley the following day with his partner. There, Bud meets Diran and Mike. They are hunters too when he gets there. To murder the vampires, they would travel there. Bud asks them to go after telling them that these vampires are their objective. We'll kill the vampires together, they offer Bud. After selling them, we'll divide the money that we'll receive. After Bud gives his consent, they all go inside to murder the vampires. After a lot of battles, they kill a lot of vampires there. They have collected the vampire fangs for selling. A vampire kidnaps Seth in the interim, which causes him a great deal of anxiety. Bud responds, "You are very brave. That's why you fought with the vampire." This makes him very happy, and he says, "Bud, I want to be a vampire hunter like you." Later, Bud brings Paige to her friend's birthday party. He later receives a call from Audrey. "You killed my daughter, and I'll soon kidnap your wife and daughter as well," she tells him. Concerned, Bud removes his daughter from the celebration. He instructs her to sit here and play the game quietly while he puts her in the car. Because Audrey's friends were pursuing him and trying to kill him, Bud started to run away. Bud kills them all after tricking them all. Bud enters the tube. The walkway was narrow. The lives of Bud and his daughter are spared since Bud manages to get out of the tunnel. He brings his daughter to Jocelyn's house. Audrey was already there, he notices. "What is this going on?" she asked, holding Jocelyn. Later on, Bud confesses to Jocelyn that he is actually a vampire hunter. When he killed them, he would extract their fangs. "This place is full of vampires. To exact retribution on me, they have come here." Audrey tells Bud, "You killed my daughter. Right now, I'm going to make your daughter a vampire." There, Bud discovers Seth, who was bitten by them. They attack Bud, and he has passed out. Jocelyn and Paige had been removed from there by Audrey and her friends. Bud sees his friends standing in front of him. According to Seth, "Since I became a vampire, I now need blood." Bud advises us that we must leave the area quickly. The former neighbor, Heather, is approached by Bud. "Why, you've deceived me," Bud wonders. And Heather shares Audrey with Bud. "Audrey transformed me into a vampire and held me as a slave. However, I want to get revenge on her now that I'm with you." She also gives Seth some blood to drink. 3 of them later go to the same place as Audrey and her friends. One by one, the 3 of them murdered numerous vampires. There were plenty of vampires there that they couldn't face. Meanwhile, Bud's pal Big John shows up there. He slaughtered all the vampires with a machine gun he had brought along. The girl tells Bud about the tunnel where all the vampires dwell in secret. Bud goes with Big John downside. There they murder a lot of vampires. Audrey's friend tells her that Bud and his group have come here. She requests that he go fetch Bud for me. Bud and Big John were engaged in combat with vampires on the opposite side. Meanwhile, Big John is abruptly bitten by a vampire. He sends Bud ahead and places a gate there as a result. As Bud was leaving, his friend's rifle ran out of ammunition. The bomb was fastened to his chest there, and he pulls it. As he detonates the explosives, Audrey, his companion, arrives to apprehend Bud. Seth and Heather then murder him. Bud approaches Audrey and takes her life, but she dropped it since she was moving so fast. Jocelyn attacked Audrey from behind with wood just as Audrey was about to kill Bud. Bud gets to his feet and shoots her, but she catches the bullet in her teeth. Now Audrey is settling down to murder Bud. In the meantime, Bud inserts a silver wire before shooting, causing her neck to come off and her death. After taking Jocelyn and Paige, Bud later comes out after Audrey has passed away. According to Heather, "We've won this war." In the meantime, Bud accepts his friend Big John's hat. Giving it to Seth, he exhorts him to emulate his strength. When they all went outside, Ralph was there. Bud is told, "You have violated the rules." Here, however, Bud is told by Seth, whom Ralph appointed as his partner, "We haven't broken any rules. Rather, all of this has been done to save Bud's wife and daughter." When Ralph heard this, he went without saying anything. "He was hiding this truth," Jocelyn tells him, "and I've forgiven you for all of your lies." She wants to return to living with Bud. Bud is glad to have his family back when he hears this. This is where the film's happy conclusion occurs.